I once believed that loneliness was a punishment, a sign that I'd failed at the most basic human task, belonging. But after counseling thousands of people desperate to escape their isolation, I discovered something disturbing. What if our entire understanding of aloneness is backward? What if the moments when everyone abandons you? When colleagues question your sanity, family members express their disappointment, friends slowly disappear from your life, aren't signs you've gone tragically off course, but rather divine confirmation you're finally on the right path. What if God deliberately separates you from the herd not to punish you, but because the herd itself is headed toward a spiritual cliff? What if your most profound purpose can only be discovered after everyone else walks away? The loneliest road I ever walked became the pathway to my greatest joy. That's not what I expected to discover. It certainly wasn't what I wanted to hear when the universe first whispered those words to me during my darkest night. But truth rarely arrives dressed in the clothes we've picked out for it. We resist walking alone. Every cell in our body screams against it. From our first breath, we're programmed to seek connection, to fear abandonment, to follow the herd. The thought of striking out on our solitary path triggers something primordial in us, a fear as old as humanity itself. But what if this resistance is precisely the signal we should be following? What if God, or the universe, or divine intelligence, whatever name resonates with your spirit, is actually guiding you towards solitude, not to punish you, but to elevate you? Tonight, I want to explore this counterintuitive truth that has transformed countless lives, including my own. The truth that your most profound growth, your authentic purpose, and your highest joy may be waiting for you on a path that, at first, no one else will walk with you. Have you ever felt a persistent nudge inside your heart? A quiet voice urging you towards something that makes absolutely no logical sense. Something that would disappoint others, confuse them, maybe even anger them. It might be a career change that everyone tells you is foolish. A relationship you need to end though all your friends adore your partner. A cross-country move when your family expects you to stay close. A creative pursuit that seems impractical. A spiritual path that differs from your upbringing. These promptings often begin as whispers, easy to ignore amid the noise of everyday life, easy to dismiss as silly daydreams or passing thoughts. But they persist. They grow louder. They arrive in your quiet moments, in the shower, on your morning walk, just before you drift to sleep. They tap you on the shoulder until finally you turn around. And when you do, when you truly listen, you recognize that this voice isn't coming from your ego. It's not coming from your fears or your desires for status or approval. It's coming from somewhere deeper, somewhere wiser. It's coming from the part of you that's connected to something greater. This is the voice of divine guidance. This voice rarely tells us what everyone else wants to hear. It rarely points us toward the convenient path, the expected path, the path of least resistance. More often, it calls us to walk alone. What will they think? 4 simple words that have kept more people stuck in mediocre lives than perhaps any other phrase in human history. These words reveal our deepest fear. Not that we might fail, but that we might be rejected, that we might stand alone, that we might be cast out from the tribe. This fear makes evolutionary sense. For most of human history, being separated from the group meant almost certain death. Our ancestors survived by belonging, by conforming to tribal expectations, by not rocking the boat. We've inherited this primal fear, though the stakes are no longer so dire. We won't die if our colleagues raise their eyebrows at our career change. We won't perish if our childhood friends don't understand our spiritual awakening. We won't starve if our family is confused by our lifestyle choices, yet the fear feels just as intense. A woman once approached me after a talk, tears streaming down her face. For 20 years, she dreamed of opening a small bookstore in her community. She had the business plan, the savings, even the perfect location, but she hadn't taken a single step toward this dream. My husband thinks it's impractical, she said. My sister laughed when I mentioned it. My children worry I'll lose our security. And what do you think? I asked her. I think it's what I was born to do, she whispered. But I'm terrified of disappointing everyone. This woman's story is everyone's story. We feel the call to our authentic path, but we resist it because that path, at least initially, appears to lead away from others rather than toward them. We resist because we don't understand a fundamental truth. Sometimes God tells us to walk alone, not to isolate us, but to individuate us. Throughout spiritual traditions, solitude plays a sacred role in transformation. Moses climbed the mountain alone to receive the commandments. Buddha sat alone beneath the Bodhi tree. Jesus went into the wilderness for 40 days. Muhammad received his revelations in the solitude of a cave. In each case, separation preceded revelation. Solitude was the necessary condition for divine encounter. Aloneness was not a punishment, but a prerequisite for the next level of awareness. This pattern exists in your life too, though, perhaps in less dramatic form. Think about the times you've experienced significant growth or gained important clarity. And weren't many of these breakthroughs preceded by periods of feeling separate, misunderstood, or like you were navigating uncharted territory without the college graduate who moves to a new city where she knows no one and finally discovers who she is when no one is telling her who she should be. The man who loses his job at 20 years and, after months of disorientation, finds the parent who makes an unpopular decision for their child, enduring criticism from family members only to watch their child flourish in ways that eventually silence the critics. These wilderness periods serve crucial purposes in our development. They strip away external influences so we can hear our inner truth. They reveal our strength and resilience when we can't lean on others. They force us to develop discernment, to distinguish between our authentic voice and our conditioned responses. They bring us face to face with our deepest fears, giving us the opportunity to move beyond them. They prepare us to serve others from a place of genuine wholeness rather than needy incompleteness. In the words of the German poet Rainer Maria Rilke, the necessary thing is after all, but this solitude, great inner solitude, going into oneself and for hours meeting no one, this one must be able to attain. Divine guidance towards solitude typically arrives in one of three forms. Learning to recognize these invitations can help us respond with courage rather than resistance. The first invitation comes as a calling towards something new, a positive pull toward an unexplored direction. This might be a creative impulse, a career opportunity, a new way of living that excites you even as it intimidates you. The hallmark of this invitation is that it energizes you despite your fears. A young man felt drawn to leave his successful corporate career to become a teacher in an underserved community. His colleagues thought he was having a breakdown. His parents worried he was throwing away his future. But the pull was undeniable. Every time he imagined himself in that classroom, working with those children, his entire being lit up with purpose. The second invitation comes as a growing discomfort with what is a sense that your current path, though comfortable and approved by others, has become a betrayal of your authentic self. The hallmark of this invitation is a persistent feeling of living someone else's life. A woman in her 50s had built a respected career as an attorney. She had the house, the car, the vacations, the status, yet each morning she felt an emptiness that no external achievement could fill. When she finally admitted to herself that she'd chosen law to please her father rather than follow her own heart, she began the painful but liberating process of reimagining her life. The third invitation comes through loss or disruption, when circumstances force you onto an unexpected path. This might be a relationship ending, a health crisis, a financial setback, or any situation that demolishes your carefully constructed plans. The hallmark of this invitation is that it initially feels like punishment rather than opportunity. A man lost his wife of 30 years to cancer. In his grief, he found himself isolated. Friends didn't know what to say. His adult children were consumed with their own mourning. In this unwanted solitude, he began walking in nature each. These walks became a form of moving meditation. Over time, he discovered a profound connection to something greater than himself, a connection that eventually led him to counsel others through their own grief journeys. None of these invitations promise an easy journey. All of them require walking a path that others may not understand or approve of. All of them demand the courage to stand alone, at least for a time. Those who accept these invitations, who find the courage to walk alone when called, discover that what appeared to be a journey away from others ultimately becomes the path to their most meaningful connections. This is the great paradox. The path that begins in solitude often leads to more authentic community. When we refuse to walk alone, when we cling to relationships, groups, or identities that no longer serve our growth, we actually prevent ourselves from forming the deeper connections we truly desire. Think about it. How can you genuinely connect with others when you're hiding your authentic self? How can you find your true community when you're clinging to relationships based on who you used to be rather than who you're becoming? True connection isn't about proximity or longevity. It's about authenticity, the courage to be seen as you really are and to see others as they really are. A woman who had been raised in a strict religious household felt for years that her questions and doubts made her a bad person. She kept them hidden, playing the role of the perfect believer while inwardly wrestling with theological concepts that didn't resonate with her experience. When she finally found the courage to express her true spiritual perspective, she lost relationships with several church friends who couldn't accept her new path. For months, she felt achingly alone. But gradually, she discovered others asking similar questions. She formed new relationships based not on inherited beliefs, but on authentic spiritual inquiry. These connections, though fewer in number, nourished her soul in ways her previous relationships never had. For the first time, she told me, I feel truly seen and accepted, not for who I pretend to be, but for who I actually am. What begins as a lonely journey ultimately leads to your true community. The people who recognize and celebrate your authentic self, not the persona you develop to keep others comfortable. But you cannot find these people, these soul companions, without first having the courage to walk your unique path, even when it means walking alone. If you choose to answer the call to walk alone, to follow your inner guidance, even when it leads away from the crowd, you'll likely move through several distinct stages. Understanding these stages can help you navigate them with more grace and less. The first stage is separation. This is the hardest part. The breaking away, the no to what no longer serves you, the step onto the path that only you can see. During this stage, you may feel misunderstood, judged, or even shunned by those who don't understand your choices. You may doubt yourself intensely. You may be tempted to turn back to the comfort of conformity. A young artist described this stage as feeling like I was cutting off my own arm. His decision to pursue his creative vision rather than follow his family's multi-generational business tradition created a painful rift. Every instinct told me to give up, to go back, to be the person they needed me to be. He said, but something deeper kept me moving forward, even through tears. The second stage is disorientation. Once you've separated from the old path, you enter a wilderness period where the new way isn't yet clear. You've left the familiar shore, but haven't yet spotted land on the horizon. During this stage, you may feel lost, confused, or afraid. You may question your decision and wonder if you've made a terrible mistake. A woman who left a toxic but long-term relationship described this stage as floating in outer space without a tether. The relief of leaving an unhealthy situation was overshadowed by the terrifying sense of having no identity apart from that relationship. Who am I if not his partner? She asked herself daily, what do I even like? What do I believe? I felt like I had to rediscover myself from scratch. The third stage is reconnection, not to your old life, but to your authentic self and to the divine guidance that prompted your journey. During this stage, you begin to trust your inner wisdom more deeply. You start to experience the freedom that comes with authenticity. You discover resources within yourself that you never knew existed. A man who walked away from a lucrative but soul-crushing career described this stage as finally being able to hear myself think. After months of financial worry and second-guessing, he experienced a profound shift. One morning, I woke up and realized I was no longer trying to prove anything to anyone, he said. I felt this incredible peace, like I'd finally come home to myself. The fourth stage is reintegration. Having discovered your authentic path, you begin to form new connections based on who you truly are rather than who you pretend to be. During this stage, you often attract relationships and opportunities that align with your genuine purpose. You may even reconcile with some from your past life who can now accept the authentic you. A woman who had the courage to publicly embrace her non-traditional spiritual beliefs after years of hiding them described the joy of finding her true community. These connections feel like breathing fresh air after being in a stuffy room for years, she said. And the most surprising thing, some family members who initially rejected my path have started to come around. They see my joy, my peace, and they're curious rather than judgmental now. The final stage is contribution. Having walked your solitary path and discovered your authentic gifts, you're now able to serve others from a place of wholeness rather than need. Your journey, especially its difficult parts, becomes a source of wisdom you can offer the world. Every person who has ever made a meaningful difference began by having the courage to walk alone. Every movement, every innovation, every healing approach started with someone who was willing to leave the crowd to follow their inner guidance. You may be at the beginning of such a journey right now, hearing the call but hesitating at the threshold. You may be in the middle, feeling disoriented and wondering if you've lost your way. Or you may be emerging on the other side, beginning to see how your solitary path was preparing you for connections and contributions beyond what you could have imagined. Wherever you are on this journey, know this. The path that begins in solitude does not end there. Even understanding the purpose and stages of the solitary journey doesn't make it easy. There will be days when the loneliness feels crushing, when the doubt is deafening, when the temptation to return to the comfort of conformity is almost irresistible. How do you find the courage to continue when the path feels too long? First, distinguish between solitude and isolation. Solitude is a conscious choice to temporarily separate yourself from external influences so you can hear your inner wisdom more clearly. Isolation is a fearful state of disconnection from both others and yourself. Solitude is healing. Isolation is harmful. Practice daily rituals that connect you with your inner guidance and with something greater than yourself. Whether through meditation, prayer, journaling, time in nature, or creative expression, these practices remind you that you're never truly alone. A man who left his religious community after a profound shift in beliefs created a morning ritual of reading from wisdom traditions across cultures, then sitting in silent contemplation. This practice became my church, he said. It reminded me daily that I was part of something vast and loving, even when I felt ostracized by the community that had once been my home. Second, find courage in the stories of others who have walked before you. Every wisdom tradition, every cultural renaissance, every social advancement began with individuals willing to stand alone. Draw strength from their examples. When a woman faced harsh criticism for her environmental activism in a community dependent on industries that harmed the local ecosystem, she found courage by reading about historical figures who had taken unpopular stands for what they believed was right. Their stories were like companions on my journey, she said. If they could endure much worse opposition for what they knew was true, I could withstand a few uncomfortable community meetings. Third, practice self-compassion. When the journey becomes difficult, speak to yourself with the kindness you would offer a beloved friend facing a similar challenge. Acknowledge the difficulty of your path without judging yourself for struggling. A young man who was the first in his family to pursue higher education described overwhelming feelings of guilt and disloyalty as he moved between his academic world and his family culture. I used to berate myself for feeling torn, for not handling it perfectly, he said. Learning to speak gently to myself on the hard days made all the difference. I'd literally say out loud, and this is really difficult. It's natural to feel conflicted. You're doing the best you can. Fourth, find selective support. While the nature of your journey means not everyone will understand or approve, seek out those who can hold space for your authentic path without trying to pull you back to conformity. A woman exploring an unconventional career after decades in a traditional field found a mentor who had made a similar transition. I didn't need everyone to understand, she said. Having just one person who could truly see my vision without trying to, who saves me from it, gave me the strength to face everyone who thought I'd lost my mind. Finally, trust the unfolding. The path that begins in solitude rarely reveals its full purpose in advance. Each step illuminates only the next step, not the entire journey. Developing trust in this unfolding process, in the divine intelligence that called you to this path, is perhaps the greatest spiritual practice of the solitary journey. A man who followed an inner prompting to move across the country with no job and no connections described the terror of this leap. For months I questioned my sanity, he said, but gradually I started meeting exactly the right people at exactly the right time. Opportunities appeared that I couldn't have planned if I tried. Looking back, I can see an intelligence at work that was far wiser than my own limited perspective before any of that could be revealed. The hero's journey follows the same pattern. The hero leaves the ordinary world, faces trials in a special world, and returns to the ordinary world transformed, bringing back a gift that serves the community. Your solitary journey follows this same ancient pattern. The gift you bring back isn't just for you. It's for all of us. When you have the courage to walk alone, to follow your inner guidance, even when it leads away from the crowd, you return with something precious, your authentic self, your unique wisdom, your genuine gifts. A woman who spent years recovering from trauma, often feeling painfully alone in her healing journey, eventually became a compassionate counselor for others facing similar challenges. Every tearful night, every moment of despair, every hard-won insight became a lantern I could hold up for someone else lost in that same darkness, she told me. Nothing was wasted. A man who followed an unexpected spiritual path against the wishes of his family became a bridge builder between different faith traditions in his community. Because I know how it feels to be an outsider, I can create spaces where no one feels excluded, he explained. My own journey through rejection gave me a heart for those who don't fit neatly into conventional categories. What else? The universe works. What feels like isolation becomes initiation. What feels like abandonment becomes preparation. What feels like a journey away from others ultimately becomes the path to your most meaningful service to them. The very experiences that break your heart open make you capable of holding space for others in their brokenness. The wisdom you gain through solitude becomes a gift you offer to a world desperate for authentic voices. As we draw to a close, I want to speak directly to something stirring in your heart right now. There's a reason you're hearing these words at this particular moment in your life. There's a calling that's been tapping on the door of your consciousness, maybe for days, maybe for decades. You know what it is? It's that thing you push away because it seems too difficult, too disruptive, too different from what others expect of you. This isn't the whole of who you are. There's more to you, more through you, more for you. It's that path that both calls and terrifies you. The one that might require you to disappoint people you love, to leave behind identities you've invested in, to step into terrain where, at least for a time, you may need to walk alone. This calling isn't random. It isn't accidental. It isn't a mistake. It's divine guidance calling you toward your next evolution, toward the person you're capable of becoming, toward the contribution only you can make. Yes, our answering this call may require courage. It may require walking alone for a season. It may require facing the disapproval of those who prefer you to remain as you've always been. But consider this, your willingness to walk this path isn't just about you. It's about all of us. In a world where so many live lives of quiet conformity, your courage to follow your authentic path becomes permission for others to do the same. Your willingness to stand alone when necessary creates space for a new kind of community to form. One based on authenticity rather than appearance, on genuine purpose rather than social pressure. Perhaps this is why God is telling you to walk alone. Not to isolate you, but to individuate you, not to separate you from love, but to lead you to a more authentic expression of it, not to diminish your impact, but to prepare you for a contribution only your unique journey can make possible. The question before you isn't whether you have what it takes to walk this path. The divine wouldn't call you to a journey you lack the capacity to complete. The question is whether you're willing to trust that the path beginning in solitude is actually leading you toward your most profound connection, to yourself, to others, to the work you're here to do? I believe you are. I believe that same quiet voice that's been whispering to your heart has also been preparing you with everything you'll need for the journey. Take the next step, even if you must take it alone. The path will unfold before you. The strength will arise within you, and you'll discover, perhaps to your surprise, that what began as a solitary journey ultimately connects you to your truest self, your authentic community, and your most meaningful contribution to our world. You were never meant to walk alone forever. Just long enough to become the person you were always meant to be. And that person is exactly who we've been waiting for.